Professor Michael Sternfeld is a distinguished scholar and expert on the Ramayana with a specialization in Vedic Psychology from Maharishi International University. He has produced several multimedia works based on the Ramayana and has spent over 3 decades popularizing this sacred epic across continents as well as teaching courses on the Ramayana and engaging in consciousness studies. He was one of the guest speakers at the second Global Vedic Conference held at Prasanthi Nilayam in January 2026. During his talk, he explored how the Ramayana, through the power of love and Dharma, offers a profound Vedic framework for inner transformation and global harmony. Sairam, and a warm welcome to you, Mr. Michael Sternfeld, to the studios of Sri Sathya Sai Media Center.
It's really a pleasure to be here with you.
You have spent, I guess, more than half of your life studying the Vedanta, that is the Ramayana. For us to hear from you how the Ramayana is truly a Vedanta will be indeed our opportunity, our blessing. We wish to hear from you about this Ramayana that is happening every moment within ourselves.
It's good that you, the way you framed it just now, saying that the Ramayana is happening inside of us. Because on one level, as I gave in my talk the other day, the Ramayana it's a history of total reality. It's itihas. It chronicles events that actually happened thousands of years ago. At the same time, it's a subtle dynamic happening at every point in creation. And all my years of studying the Ramayana, that juxtaposition between this story that actually happened and this eternal reality of it, which is the Vedanta of it, it's hard to even wrap your mind around that.
Yes.
Just as it's hard to wrap your mind around that Ram was Avatar. He was God in human form. Vishnu himself, the most expanded Godhead, took the form of a human being. And that's another juxtaposition. How can a divine being, Godhead himself, collapse that infinity to live in a human body? And this is why the Ramayana is such a powerful vehicle for study, lifelong study, to somehow integrate that we are also divine beings in human form. And Ram is a beautiful role model for that. So that's a good starting point, maybe.
No, I think that's a very, very powerful point. You said Ram is a role model. The divine, the supreme consciousness, as you mentioned, the most expansive being of the universe. The universe is him, but he contracted himself. He capsuled himself into a name and form and into flesh and blood only so that he can perhaps teach us how to become divine, teach us how to lead a dharmic life. And that's what he did thousands of years ago. And because those lessons are eternal, even today we are discussing, I think hardly there are any stories that have been discussed, that have been portrayed, that have been reimagined, that have been extrapolated for these many number of years as the Ramayana is.
Yeah, you're right. I got a little chill when you said that, Vishu, because the Ramayana, one scholar, Paula Richmond, who wrote the book Many Ramayanas, said the Ramayana is the most generative piece of literature in history. Generative meaning it's created not just in India, but in terms of stories, theatrical productions, dance productions, shadow puppet theater,
Yes.
Ritual Kathak dance in Indonesia, in countries that are Buddhist, in countries that are Muslim, in Vedic India, in the United States, in Russia, there's performances of the Ramayana. And many of the other great epics, they faded away from people's awareness. The Ramayana has never faded away because, as it says in the Ramayana, as long as the mountains stand and the rivers flow,
Yes.
the Ramayana story will be told. So we still have mountains, we still have rivers, and the Ramayana is still generating so much interest throughout the world. And that's been one of my missions, is to popularize the Ramayana in the West, which is the main. That's why I do these various productions of the Ramayana to bring. In India, you already know this story. Everyone grew up with it. But in United States, English-speaking countries, Canada, Australia, it's people really tune into it. They're very responsive. And you know why I think they were so responsive? Because somehow, on an intuitive level, they know it's the story of themselves. It's the story of their inner self. They can feel it. I remember, one of the things that I became well known for was very few people, even in India, have read the entire Valmiki Ramayana. I wanted to ask people to raise their hands and say, in the audience yesterday, how many people have read the original unabridged Valmiki Ramayana in Sanskrit? Very small number. And then I would ask, how many have read it in their mother tongue? Very small number. Most people in the West read abridged versions, very short versions, because you know how the Ramayana is this long.
Yes.
Mahabharata is even longer. So, excuse me, many people don't know the full story. So I decided, the Ramayana was an oral tradition. Originally, it was handed down pundit to pundit for generations, thousands of generations before Valmiki even wrote it down, And I decided to do a full, complete audio production, a dramatic reading in English of the entire unabridged Ramayana of Valmiki. It took 7 years to complete. It's 75 hours long. It's the world's longest audiobook.
Awesome.
And when you really listen to it, and over the years, it was finished from 1997 to 2004. And, nowadays people only can have the attention span with social media for like little clips. But still, some people are really still listening. If you do that, it's an incredibly powerful sadhana to listen to the entire Ramayana. And I know in India in the spring, they have what's called the 9 days rite, where a pundit chants the entire Valmiki Ramayana over 9 days.
Yes.
But I think the masses don't do that. Everyone reads Tulsidas Ramayana, which is 15th century. But I would encourage people to make the sadhana of listen in your mother tongue, in Sanskrit if you can, in English if you speak English, listen to the entire Ramayana and see what an incredibly powerful, enlightening effect it'll have on your life.
Wow. I think, as you very rightly said, in India, the story is familiar to a lot of people. That's because of, apart from the text, because it was visually on the TV as a serial in the 90s,
Right.
So those were the days when TVs were just coming into a lot of towns in India. And it was Ramayana which brought in that revolution. People started buying TVs in their homes because they wanted to watch Ramayana on every Sunday. Of course, there is the legacy, there is the history, and people always have been worshipping Rama because it has come down over generations. But that is one of the reasons how Ramayana is definitely part of the folklore in every state of India, and it has gone passed on. But the point that you made, that you are trying to take this story and its message to the West. I want to know from you, how has this experience been? What is it about Ramayana that has fascinated or caught the attention of the people in the West? What is it in Ramayana that they find, wow, this is something very interesting?
First, I want to comment about the Ramanand Sagar Ramayana series from 1988 and 1989, because you brought that up as the prelude to your question. Before Ramanand Sagar passed, just before he passed, I interviewed him for an article I was doing called The Ramayana in Modern Media and Performance. But how many expressions of the Ramayana all over the world, especially in media, film, video, theatrical productions. And from that, I became friendly with the grandsons of Ramanand Sagar. And I've worked with them over the last 15 years. I'm always come to visit them in Mumbai. and I really had a chance to get to know the family and how they work.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
it was, and just especially Ramanand Sagar's son, Prem Sagar, who was the producer who just recently passed away. And their vision, Ramanand Sagar's vision, I mean, he was a great filmmaker, one of the great filmmakers of India. And for him to do a video series was, that was quite unusual. And to make it for the masses. And what that, like you said, it was a cultural phenomenon. 600 million people in India were watching at the same time. And up until then, every province, every state of India, every region, every language group had a different, there was Kampan Ramayana, Tulsidas Ramayana.
Yeah.
And somehow that Ramayana united India. And we see all the fulfillment of that when they inaugurated the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya last year.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And you could feel that the hearts of India, everyone came together. And I think the Ram Mandir inauguration really recapitulated that energy that happened in 1988, 89. It was watched all over the world. It was watched in the West. Everyone was watching that. It was a cultural phenomenon like there's, and it showed that the Ramayana is universal. In my community in Fairfield, Iowa, which is the home of Maharishi International University, Maharishi actually told us, my guru, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, told us that this is the one video for life. Everyone should watch this. He had never done that before, to bring something from India like that in story form. Everyone was watching it, Western people. So at least in my community, it was so, everyone got deeply exposed. And that's when I was exposed.
Oh, okay.
That's when I got started. So I had done my master's in Vedic science at Maharishi International University right at the time that the Sagar video series was running.
Oh.
And, I began to become aware of it. So it was right around that time when the Sagar Ramayana was playing all over India. I became aware of it, and I was in my master's program in Vedic science at Maharishi International University in Vedic science. And Maharishi, my teacher, suggested to the students in my program that each of us should pick one branch of Vedic literature and become an expert in it. And I zoomed right in on Ramayana.
Wow.
Because since I was a little boy, I always loved great epic stories. Great epic stories of adventure, heroic quests. That was what delighted me, intrigued me. The great Western myths and epics like the Odyssey and so on, Jason and the Argonauts. Those are the things I grew up on, watching movies of them. And here was a story. This was a story, that both was a story and had the deepest level of knowledge in it. I mean, the Odyssey, which is the seminal myth in the West, could be one little chapter in the Ramayana. The Ramayana is so comprehensive, so vast, so profound, which takes us on the most surface level of life to the deepest, most profound level of Atma and Brahman. So I was hooked. And starting in 1991, after I graduated, I began to take action. It was a really interesting story. I'm going to answer your question, but it was an interesting story so I was focused on it, when I graduated, and but then yet, you get caught up in life, and it kind of slipped away a little bit from that was my mission. And then in 1993, all of a sudden I got a letter from Holland, from Vlodrop, or notification. Actually, my advisor in my master's program contacted me, that was it, and said, they want you to do a production of the Ramayana for the Maharishi school, the children's school. And the only qualification is you need to use all of them. And at that time, there was 600 students in the school. And I go, and then I said, why? I already graduated 4 years ago. Because I had already, we had to write, each of the students had to write what we wanted to do with this precious Vedic knowledge. And that's what I wrote to Maharishi, that I wanted to produce and direct the Ramayana under his guidance. So here's 4 years later. And then I asked my advisor, Professor Agnes, who's the Sanskrit professor at MIU, Maharishi International University, and I said, why? Why would I get this all of a sudden? And he said, I guess Maharishi finally read your letter. So I undertook to do this theatrical production. We ended up scaling it back a little bit. We used the children primarily, about 400, including upper level students, middle school. And, how do you do a production with that many kids? It was more like a halftime celebration or the opening ceremony of the Olympics. But somehow I imagined to divide the Ramayana into 7, the primary scenes, and then created a narration which connected it. It was an extraordinary production. I've been a producer my whole life. I've produced a lot of things, video, theater, music, and dance. This was the most challenging, to take this infinite story and make it, I didn't want to do a light, fluffy version. I wanted to make it deep. So that's how I got started. And since then, I began to do other productions, like I built a theme park based on the Ramayana, an adventure park where the students would reenact. They'd actually go through, like, for example, they would fly on a harness zip line across this deep ravine, flying through a giant sea monster's mouth, and they were Hanuman.
Oh.
And they had to say, Prakritim svama vashtabhya vishvijami puna punaha. Curving back on myself, I create again and again. They had to learn all the Vedic lessons along the way. Anyway, I'm still diverging, but...
Please go on, it's very interesting.
Yeah. So, these are the things I did. In the early years, it was with students. But then in 1997, I said, I need to mature this up for myself. I need to really go. I had not even read the complete unabridged Valmiki Ramayana. Hardly anyone does. That's when literally the unabridged Valmiki Ramayana is like opening the doorway to Vedic civilization. Because in the unabridged version, there's so many stories within the stories that no one ever hears about in the abridgments. Like, for example, one of my favorite parts in the Ramayana is the battle between Vishwamitra and Vasishta over the Shabala, the cow, cow of plenty, which to me was the triumph of the Brahmana over the Kshatriya.
Yeah.
And that really was deeply purifying for me.
Yes.
So now I'm going to get to your question. When you really tune into the Ramayana, you realize it brings out universal values. In fact, that's probably my original, one of the first published articles I did was Universal Values of the Ramayana. The reason why the Ramayana has lasted so long, the reason why the Ramayana is spread across so many cultures, Thailand, Burma, Indonesia, Cambodia, Vietnam, because it has universal values. And every country, every civilization has adapted it in their own language, their own time, their own geography. So I'm a purist. The deepest roots of the banyan tree are the Valmiki Ramayana. This is the original Vedic cognition. It's a Purusheya, it's eternal. And it's confirmed in the Ramayana itself, where Brahma himself comes to Valmiki after he sees the hunter kill the male bird while they're in the midst of love. And then he curses the hunter and realizes that first shloka, that curse, yes. He's a sage. He said, how could I dissipate my tapas by cursing that hunter? But it was such a cruel thing to do. And he kept thinking about that. Many know this story, but I'm saying it here. And then Brahma himself comes to him and says, the progenitor of the world comes to him and said, no, I put those words in your mouth. Now go deep inside your mind's eye, cognize the entire story, and then bring it out. 24,000 couplet verses pouring out of Valmiki. He wasn't writing them, he was cognizing them from that percolation of the field of the Vedas that come out of the Absolute. That's why no human being, mortal human being with a finite mind could cognize the Ramayana. And it's so complex, it's so multi-layered, it's so unbelievably rich with subtle connections and karmas from the past. Who could ever cognize that? Who could ever write that from their own limited mind? It's Veda. It's Veda in story form. Veda is that eternal level of life. I remember, and I'm sure Sathya Sai Baba has said this, people say, when were the Vedas written down? You could, these Sathya Sai Baba, Maharishi would laugh. The Vedas created the universe.
Yes.
It's not like we're just saying all of a sudden, like that the Aryan invasion, which was completely disproved, and they wrote down these Vedas in 300 BC. It's completely fabricated reality. The Vedas are eternal. They're Aporasheya. They're the blueprint of creation. Out of that percolating field of the absolute has a sound value, and the sound value is the Vedas. And these great rishis, Maruchandas, Vedavyas, they would go deep inside their own consciousness, and they would cognize the percolations of the sound, the shrutis, smriti. They would cognize these stories and later write them down. But the Vedas are eternal. And I know because the Ramayana is the most expressed value of the Vedic literature, it's like the end of the Vedas, and it's in story form, and because it has a lot of folklore traditions wrapped around it, people sometimes don't even include it as Veda, or at least Vedic literature, but it really is. And that's why it has such a profound intrinsic value embedded within it. And now I'm beginning to answer your question. How could this Ramayana, it is wrapped in the cultural values of India, how could it take hold in the West? How would people be interested in it?
On what in it interests them?
Well, this is what it is. I'd say on a deepest level, and they might not even be aware of that, is that they somehow, even without being intellectually aware, sometimes without being aware, they somehow get that it's this intrinsic story of ourselves. Meaning, I don't think that's intellectual. Somehow they hear it and they're touched by it. They're moved by it. I remember when I first came out with, I spent 7 years recording this, production. And my nephews, who really grew up in Chicago, no sense of spiritual values. Their parents were not into that. And I remember I played it for them. Mm-hmm. And they were young at the time, 1990s. They must have been like 15, 16 years old. And I thought they would say, Uncle Mike, okay, yeah, we don't want to listen to it. They were like really tuned in. They were really listening. They had no idea what it was about. They had no cultural context. But I remember they were intrigued. They were attracted to it. First of all, it's a great story.
Yes.
It's an incredible love story. It's a heroic quest. Now I'm going to go. In the West, we love heroic quests. Whether it's Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Star Wars,
yes.
We love heroic journeys. We love heroes on a mythic journey. And the Ramayana is the ultimate heroic quest. Also, it's the first heroic quest. This whole idea of a heroic quest where there's a great hero, or usually a young, uninitiated hero, who something happens which disrupts, his comfortable home life, his role at home, and somehow he's pulled out of his comfortable home and he must go on a great journey. And then there's many trials and tribulations in the journey, and then some peak experience where he must overcome the demons, either inside himself or outside. And then there's some big transformation, and then the fourth stage of the journey that he must return home to bless his people. That's the four basic stages of the heroic quest, talked about by the great mythologist Joseph Campbell. The Ramayana is the most powerful heroic quest. It's the source from which all the heroic quests have developed. And it's interesting, just on a popular level, it was well known that George Lucas, creator of Star Wars, studied with Joseph Campbell. That's where he got many of his ideas about yes. Mahabharata and Ramayana. And so many of the people in Hollywood, in the United States, studied myth, the mythic literature, and epic literature, because they know that's a gold mine.
Yes.
And I will qualify something. In India, whenever I use the word myth, they don't like that, because myth means some fanciful story from the past. But let me define myth the way Joseph Campbell defined it. And as soon as I defined it, everyone in India is comfortable with my use of the term myth. Joseph Campbell said that myth is the sum total of the all the values, the deepest values of a civilization. Meaning, if you took all the collective consciousness of a people and then you created it in story form, it comes out as a myth. It's their stories of creation. And when you look at it that way, people are comfortable with the term myth. It's not some little fairy tale. It's and this is the way, as Joseph Campbell was famous for comparative mythology, finding that he wrote his famous book, Hero with a Thousand Faces, which he said that he discovered that every civilization, there was such parallels between their creation myths. So anyway, now I'm getting to the essence of the story, that the essence to your question is there's an identity, first of all, as a story of deep in their own nature, which they might not even intellectually know. It's a fantastic adventure story. It's the greatest love story. It's got unbelievable special effects and battles with supernatural beings. Who could have thought of all that?
Yes.
I mean, and the battles like between Lakshman and Indrajit,
Yeah.
it's just mind-blowing because they could fight multidimensionally. They not only fought on the ground, they could fly through the air, then they could use black magic, they could appear and disappear. I mean, any video game, I'm surprised actually I worked on a video game, but it never was released. It's fantastical. So it sparks the imagination. There's another reason why people are attracted to it. Ram was a divine being in human form. He just had the sum total of wholeness of life. And you can feel that. Many of the other heroes from Western literature, like Ulysses, Odysseus from the Odyssey, he was incredibly clever, wily, a trickster. There's no hero in any of the great literature that I've seen, epic literature, that the hero is an embodiment of totality, wholeness. Everyone longs for totality and wholeness in their life. And here is Ram, Maryada Purushottam Ram, the embodiment of totality. Ram Ram Paramanatrupa. A hero which has such extraordinary sense of wholeness on the move, and which I wish there was more attention on Sita, because this is the only avatar that I've seen where they came down as a dynamic duo, Ram and Sita together. They collaborated on this divine mission. Some texts portray, or some commentators portray Sita as meek and submissive and not powerful. But if you look in the original Valmiki Ramayana, Sita is extraordinarily powerful and a perfect counterpart to Ram. So here you have Ram and Sita moving through the divine masculine and divine feminine, this divine mission to purify the world of stress and ignorance embodied by Ravana and the Rakshasas. And that mission is the ultimate battle between good and evil. Everyone can identify with that. Along the way, there's many different lessons, morals, insights, codes of conduct. Like, for example, my personal experience. I don't think, it's my favorite part of the Ramayana, and no one reads it. It's because it goes on for a long time. This battle between Vasishta and Vishwamitra deeply touched me. It didn't just touch my mind. It touched my soul, because I always was a Kshatriya kind of energy. And I realized Vasishta destroyed all Vishwamitra's army with his Brahmanic staff, just a staff. And I said, you know what? Kshatriya is so limited. Being a warrior is so limited. Being a man of pure knowledge, that's the ultimate power. Really affected me. There's so many stories like that affect people along the way, that are deep lessons about life. And so we can talk a little bit more about those. I can give more examples, but I hope I've answered your question.
Oh, yes. As you said, Ramayana is a Veda. I feel Veda in action, so that people can connect with what they are going through in their own lives. I think that is the reason why Ramayana continues to be sung, continues to be told, continues to be created, recreated, and reimagined and portrayed in various ways. Because I think, as you said, it is also the sum totality of all the values that we would want a man to have, a woman to have, humankind to live with. And I think, and these values are universal values. And so it doesn't matter whether you are in India or whether you are in America, you also believe in truth, you also believe in love, you also want peace. I think maybe because it is based on these eternal values, so no matter where you are, everybody connects with it, right?
And that's why at any level, from a small child to the wisest seer, you can relate to the Ramayana. In the beginning, it's like what you see, you become. You learn to emulate, you learn about courage from watching Hanuman in action.
Yes.
You learn about devotion from Sita. You learn about unbelievable service from Lakshman. You watch Bharat in action, able to sacrifice anything in devotion to his brother, even when he's given the kingdom. So, the children go, wow, I want to be like Hanuman.
Wow.
I want to be like Ram.
Awesome.
And so that's a simple level. We adore these characters and also, not just the individual, we learn about relationships.
Yes.
We learn about Sita, who, when you go into the original text, she is so powerful and firm and clear boundaries. She's characterized sometimes as submissive and weak. She's not. She is devoted with a total sense of power and sovereignty in herself. It's very important to know that she's not just giving away her power. She's so powerful in herself. She's Prakriti. She's Mother Nature herself. She's devoted to Ram out of choice because she adores him as the absolute wholeness that he embodies. Hanuman, I was talking about relationships. The ideal relationship between the brothers, Ram and Lakshman, between Ram and Bharat. Ideal relationship between father and son, Dasharatha and Ram. So not only the individual power, but this ideal relationships, harmonizing one value with every other value. You learn even the relationship of Vibhishana and Ravana, and then how Vibhishana defects from the Rakshasa camp to go to Ram, and how Ram accepts him, even though everyone, even Hanuman said, we cannot trust Vibhishana. We don't know what his motives are. And Ram said, if anyone comes to me in surrender, even if it's going to be my life and even my kingdom, I must accept them. That level of nobility, these are the lessons we learn. Those are the simple lessons. So if you just do the Ramayana just on that level, the Ramayana is a textbook for discriminating Dharma. Many commentators comment on that. Because in the beginning, as I started to say, the Ramayana is, it's very simple. The story, he's the young prince in Ayodhya, and his father decides he's going to appoint him crown prince, and he's the dutiful son, and then we all know the betrayal by Kaikeyi, and Ram was exiled to the forest for 14 years, and Kaikeyi demanded that her son Bharat be made king. And Ram responds beautifully, with total equanimity. I will gladly honor my father's word and go into the forest. So we learn, wow. I try to teach people, imagine the biggest success in your life is about to happen. And your chief rival, the one who's always undermining you, pulls it away from you at the last minute. How would you respond? When you make it personal, they go, wow. And then look at the way Ram responded. Complete unattachment, complete presence, complete expanded view. So along the way, the story gets subtler and subtler, where there's things where what's really happening here? The Ramayana, my take, is purposely ambiguous, a little gray area. Like, for example, when he makes the agreement with Sugriv, king of the Vanaras, to slay Vali. But he does it from the back, like an assassin. Doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem like right action. But as Vali lays dying on the battlefield, there's a dialogue between Vali as he lays dying. And Vali presents his case. Why would you do this? And you listen to Vali and you go, Vali's right. This seems, he's very compelling logic. But then Ram responds and brings out some deeper value that because Vali had sinned and took his brother's wife while his brother was still alive and had relations with her, that he would enjoy no protection from Dharma, that he had lost the protection of Dharma. So you realize there's another unseen value. And along the way, there's so many places like that in the Ramayana where you learn to discriminate Dharma. You have to use your own mind because there's not simple codes of conduct. Beginning, simple codes of conduct. As the story goes on, more ambiguous, more gray area. What do we do? And we know from life is sometimes not simple. There's always opposing values. So little figure out what's the path of right action. The Ramayana trains you to follow the path of right action. I wasn't aware of all these subtle layers that's come out over time. I would say I'm a little bit, this is personal, a unique case. As soon as I opened the book of the Ramayana, I knew this story.
Oh.
This was not a new thing to me. And I always felt, from the moment I heard Valmiki's name, and the moment I saw Valmiki's picture, which I know it's a modern day picture, I felt this deep relationship with Valmiki. He was like a father to me. So who knows what past lives are? But I knew the Ramayana completely when I opened the first book, opened the first page. I knew it. I've always known it. It's just, I guess it's destiny. I just have some destiny with the Ramayana.
So you didn't choose Ramayana. Ramayana chose you.
Exactly. And often over these last 34 years, I go, what more can I do? I've done film productions, theatrical productions, audio productions. It's just like enough. In fact, I did one of my talks, which I'm proud of. It's called the Vedanta of the Ramayana, saying like, this is the end. I've done everything I could with the Ramayana. I've explored it as much as possible. I've written papers. I speak on the Ramayana. And whenever I get to that point where I go, I'm done, more of the Ramayana comes out for me. Like, for example, this most recent production called Sita's Gems, which so many women all over the world, Western women, Indian women, really struggle with Ram's treatment of Sita. And it pained me to see that they have a deep love of Ram. They're devoted to Ram. And they can't accept the way Sita was treated. So there's this conflict, internal conflict, between this total devotion to Ram and the information they have. So is challenging to their values. So I realized more and more as I went into the original text how Sita was much more powerful than we could imagine. And it's not that I'm making it up. There's many versions of the story. There's some women who have retold the story of the Ramayana. They make up a new version. I'm going with the original Valmiki. Sita is extraordinarily powerful. And if you look at the story, instead of Ramayana, what if we had a Sitayana?
Sitayana, yes.
So I went through the entire Valmiki Ramayana and pulled out every passage, every canto where Sita, which features Sita, and pulled them out. And there was 24 primary passages. And when you extracted them, they're still in the story. It's from the original story. It's not like I changed anything. But when you have them stand alone, the Sitayana, you go, wow, this story could have easily been about just Sita. And in fact, in the very beginning, here's a perfect example. In the beginning, when Brahma advises him to cognize the story, he said maybe a title would be Sita's story. Valmiki almost called it that, or gave it as an alternative title.
Yes.
So I found a dozen women, very powerful women, including like Vandana Shiva, who's a famous environmentalist, to make commentary on these passages. So I took the original passages and interwove it with commentary. And I feel really good about this project because the title is Sita's Gems, and the subtitle is Unearthing the Vastness of the Divine Feminine, because Sita was born of the earth. And it really resolves this conflict. So many women who, it's an audio production, a 9-hour audio production. So many women who write me saying, this resolved the conflict. And I now see the unification of Ram and Sita. That, and it's true that after Sita returned to the earth, Ram was known as Sita Ram. And so you can see how this resolution of this apparent, not really conflict, apparent conflict, can be resolved when you go deeper. So this is an example of, I guess I diverged a little bit, but it's an example how within the Ramayana you can find, here's this thing. What's the relationship between men and women from the outer level to the subtlest level of their divine connection? And that's contained in the Ramayana. That's one of the most important values on the planet, because when there's harmony between the masculine and feminine, the planet, this is over and over time, things work much better. It's not just, we have been dominated by the patriarchy, but some people think, oh, we need to get rid of the patriarchy. No, we need full value of the patriarchy and full value of the matriarchy coming together. That changes everything. It's not one dominates over the other. That's a unification. So that's another universal value that everyone can respond to in the Ramayana, because it's a profound love story.
And as you're talking about relationships, it's not just relationships between the family, between father and son, or husband and wife, or brother and sister. It also tells us about relationship between man and society, man and nature. And I think that's again so profound and so relevant for our times when we are constantly working out how do we make the earth sustainable? How do we ensure that the planet goes on? And I think even there you have very, very powerful lessons from the Ramayana, isn't it?
Yes. And in fact, that's why I asked Vandana Shiva to write, she did the introduction and conclusion to Sita's Gems, because Sita is born of the earth. Sita is all about the relationship with nature. She's Mother Nature herself. She's Prakriti. And so, throughout the world, but I also see in India, this environmental consciousness needs a major upgrade. And so Sita is she's one of the devatas, one of the deities who was born of the earth. That's no accident. She was born of the earth. She emerged out of the earth. She helps us reestablish the right relationship with the earth, which is our mother. We can't survive without that. So throughout the Ramayana, once again, in the unabridged version, so many references to plants and animals, the flora and fauna, the relationship with the animals, the relationship between the Vanaras and humans, the relationship between Jatayu and as the best friend. And there's so many of the animals, so many of relationship with the rivers, with the ocean, meaning there was communication with all levels of the human, plant, and animal kingdom. Lakshman could divine the intentions, read the signs. At that time, people could read cues from the environment, which would happen. If the deers were moving to the right, it was a good sign. If the deer were moving to the left in your path, that was not so good. Meaning they were way more in tune with their environment, way more in tune with nature, could read the signs from nature. They were aligned with nature. They were aligned with the planets, the stars, the sun, the moon. That was not something they needed to be trained in. They were trained from a young age. We've lost that connection. That was part of their education when Ram studied with Vasishta, and Ram and his three brothers studied with Vasishta. They learned all that, but it was part of the fabric of the collective consciousness. When you read the Ramayana, that's another subtext. You get, wow, look how intimate. Even the kings and queens, especially the kings and queens, were with nature and the environment and food and the seasons and the rains. And so that was this was in Treta Yuga, the end of Treta Yuga, and there was much more alignment with the laws of nature. We need to reconnect with the laws of nature. The Ramayana is a vehicle to reconnect with the laws of nature.
Wherever Rama goes, first Rama prostrates to Mother Earth. Even before the bridge started, the obeisance that he did to the ocean, and he could have just struck an arrow and made the path, but he decided to pray and plead and work with nature to go on his mission.
Let's look at that story right there. Let's be, because once again, when you go to the original text, there's a lot of subtlety and nuance on what happens when Ram petitions the ocean to get approval, to get acceptance, allow him to build a bridge. So Ram does a 4-day fast on the ocean to offer the god of ocean, Varuna, and just to appease him and say, I'm a humble supplicant. Will you grant me passage across your vast depth? And the ocean doesn't respond. And the ocean doesn't respond. And Ram gets angry. And because he feels that he's come from a pure place, plus he knows who he is. He knows he's Vishnu incarnate. And the god of ocean should respond, especially when he's done it with such a pure heart. But god of ocean doesn't respond. He gets angry. He threatens to shoot arrows that will completely dry up the oceans. I mean, he has that power. He's the power of nature himself. And then the god of ocean finally appears. And some say that he only appeared when he was threatened. But the god of ocean says a very important thing. He said, I cannot violate my nature. I cannot be other than I am. My nature is to be vast. My depth is unplumbed, meaning I can't violate my nature. So he's basically saying the reason I didn't respond is because you're asking me to do something that I can't do. If I'm true to my nature. And so, when Ram hears that, there was an understanding, and the god of ocean allowed a causeway to be built that didn't violate its nature, and meaning this bridge. And there was, obviously, at that time, there was the ocean was much lower, and the Vanaras could easily build a bridge, and he would support it. I know in Tulsidas, the stones floated, but that's not in the Valmiki original. They wrote Ram's name on each stone. That was not in the original. But it was just basically he would support this bridge, and not like just, like the seas would part and there would be a clear pathway. He couldn't do that. But he could support a bridge being built without violating his nature. And that, I think, is a very key tool. We expect magical powers. But there's a way to work with nature without changing nature in a way that's not appropriate or against the flow of nature. We need to work with nature, surrender to nature. And it can be a negotiation. You saw there was a negotiation.
Nature itself will give us solutions, which are win-win situations.
Yeah, win-win, exactly. That's what we learned from the Ramayana, is to negotiate win-win relationships and agreements with our own nature and with all of nature. I think it's a very profound teaching, and this is what you get when you go in a little bit deeper into the story. Instead of, later versions, they kind of make up things that are delightful. Like Ram's name, we wrote Ram's names and the stones float. It's a beautiful story. Maybe that did happen as well.
Yeah.
But I always like to go back to the source, go back to Valmiki. That's the original cognition.
There are many heroes in the Ramayana. Okay. As you very rightly said, yes, it could be just the story of Sita. It was as powerful. Ramayana is as powerful just to be Sitayana. At the same time, many times it feels that the whole Ramayana happened just to tell us about Hanuman.
Absolutely.
The glory of Hanuman.
And so just so you know, so I did this 75-hour long production. That was finished already in 2004. And then I didn't know what to do for a while. Then I began to do distillations. The first distillation was Ram's Dharma, Leadership Secrets of the Ultimate Warrior Sage Prince. That was the first, 2014. But then I was thinking about Hanuman a lot. And I realized, I've always been, it's Ram. Everything was Ram to me. And then I started to work with Krishnadas, the famous kirtan singer from the United States, who has a worldwide following. He's super popular in India. in his circles, they're followers of Neem Karoli Baba. They are completely devoted to Hanuman. So I asked Krishnadas, would he like to collaborate on a project on Hanuman? And once again, we had that was 2021 we started. We released it in the beginning of 2022. It's called Hanuman's Leap of Faith. Once again, an audio production once again, I extracted all the passages, everything Hanuman says, does, and thinks from the original recording, and then we weave it together with our commentary, and Krishnadas sings. And sings his heart out. It's beautiful. And this is Hanumayana.
Hanumayana.
So we have Ramayana, we have Hanumayana, we have Sitayana.
You know what? Ramayana can be even Lakshmanayana, Bharatayana.
Exactly.
Shatrugna.
Exactly. This is my point. Because Hanuman, and this is the power, Hanuman at one time, I don't know, historically, was more of a minor deity. It's only been in modern times. I'm friends with the professor, Philip Lutgendorf, very well-known professor who wrote the book Hanuman's Tale. Really deep insights. He was the one actually who coined the term Hanumayana for me. Hanuman has grown in power, influence. He is there's more Hanuman temples, more Hanuman shrines in India. And they're building, each region is trying to build the tallest statue.
Yes.
So Hanuman has emerged as the ultimate center of devotion. And Hanuman Chalisa, everywhere is Hanuman Chalisa chanting 24 hours. And I find that so interesting because Hanuman is the only hero in the Ramayana, who has no conflict. Ram has some conflict. Sita has some conflict. Lakshman has some conflict. Bharat has some conflict. Hanuman has no conflict. Absolutely pure devotion, surrender. Hanuman is equally powerful as Ram.
Yes.
Equally powerful. He's Shiva incarnate. Equally powerful. Vishnu and Shiva are equal, And yet, even with all his power, he's unwavering devotion to Ram. Courage, clarity, insight. His intellect is so clear. His speech is so pure. His devotion of his heart is incredible. Opens his chest, and Ram and Sita are there. Everyone adores Hanuman. He's the ultimate. You're right. And look what happens at the end of the story. Everyone, when Ram goes to Brahmaloka, and all the population of Ayodhya wants to go with him. Everyone wants to go with Ram. They don't want to stay on the planet. They don't want to be here if Ram's not here. Ram asks 3 people to stick around and be eternal. Chiranjeevani. The first, of course, is Hanuman. Hanuman is eternal. As long as the rivers flow and the mountains stand, Hanuman is here. I mean, right now, when I came over here, I have a little small statue of Hanuman in my pocket. I never talk about Ramayana without Hanuman with me.
Awesome.
And the other one was Jambavan, the king of the bears. Jambavan is eternal also. And Jambavan, as you know, and if you look at the story of the Ramayana, he saved the day multiple times.
Yes.
He was the one who told Hanuman because of a curse put on him, Hanuman forgot his power. He didn't know who he was.
Correct.
Jambavan extorts him to remember who he was. Yes. And also when Lakshman is virtually killed on the battlefield, Jambavan saves the day by instructing where to get the herbs from the Himalayas that Hanuman gets. And the third is Vibhishana. So they because Vibhishana, the forces of darkness are always here, but even the forces of darkness have nobility. So the Ramayana, especially Hanuman. Hanuman is here to guide us, instruct us, teach us, and he's the ultimate role model. So many people, feel that they find it easier to cleave and open their hearts ultimately to Hanuman more than any other character in the Ramayana. But what I do, at least my sadhana in these last couple of years, because I do these projects, they have a commercial value, they're a digital download. That's not the reason I do them. The reason I do them because in the process of doing them, I grow. It fulfills the impulse of Dharma, of evolution, and by putting so much attention on them, each of these projects, the Hanuman project took about a year to put together. The Sita project took almost 2 years. That was way more than I expected. During that time, I'm just completely absorbed in Sita. Previous one, I'm completely absorbed in Hanuman. And then Rama, I'm always absorbed in. So there's a sadhana grows, because when I work on a project as a producer, it trickles into my awareness. I become that. So in these last couple of years, this is like a personal sharing, is at first I have an altar at home, and for years it was just Ram, 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 Ram. I see Ram in everything and everything in me. And then Hanuman began to grow. And in that, I would say my devotion and my surrender and my sense of service began to grow. And then with Sita, more recently, I would say, Sita is rooted in the heart, in the cave of our hearts. And that has begun to grow. But my latest is can I simultaneously hold the deep awareness, subtle awareness of Ram, Sita, and Hanuman simultaneously? It's kind of like a sadhana almost. It's because these heroes of the Ramayana, these impulses of the Ramayana, the Vedic devatas in the Ramayana, they live inside of us. So there's the outer value of the story, and on a subtle level, Ram consciousness, Ram is Brahm, totality, lives inside of me. Hanuman's total devotion, service, lives inside of me. Sita, complete alignment with nature, anchored in my heart, she lives inside of me. And there's a dance, like a lila, of the three. I mean, there's many characters in the Ramayana, but these are the three that I put my attention on the most. They live inside of me, they live inside of you, they live inside of all of us. And so we can pray to murtis, we can sing their songs, but I think it's very powerful to uncover the fabric of their nature in your own self. Very evolutionary.
In the Sathya Sai fraternity, the way we greet is Sairam.
Sairam.
The way we communicate is by saying Sairam. The way we begin any session is by saying Sairam. And so Ram constantly reverberates in the entire Sathya Sai ecosystem,
That's why I love being here, because I say Ram's name dozens of times a day as I walk around here. Sai Ram, Sai Ram, Sai Ram.
And there have been any number of discourses of Bhagavan on the Ramayana.
He wrote his own version.
Yes, the Ramakatha Rasavahini. So all the Sathya Sai devotees, they read the Ramakatha Rasavahini. And there have been so many summer courses on Indian culture and spirituality where the focus was only on Ramayana. For 15 days, for 1 month, Bhagavan spoke only on the Ramayana.
Really? I would love to have been there. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, you can read those volumes also. In the 70s, in the 80s, and the 90s, at various levels, Bhagavan spoke about the Ramayana, and he really urged everyone to read the Ramayana, to internalize the Ramayana. And we have the big Hillview Stadium, where on top of all the major deities, you have Krishna and Shiva and Jesus and Buddha and everybody. On top of all the deities is Hanuman. The 65 feet Hanuman on Baba's 65th birthday. Bhagwan unfurled that,
Wow. I need to go over to the stadium.
Yes. And that is like, and Baba said, Swami said that anyone who comes to Prasanthi Nilayam, they must set their eyes on Hanuman. And that's why it's kept in an elevated state. He should be the ideal for every devotee when it comes to service, when it comes to bhakti, when it comes to devotion, when it comes to chanting the name as well as doing the Lord's work.
It's very powerful. Sathya Sai Baba and my teacher Maharishi, I mean, both, it shows there's tremendous resonance between the two and their absolute adoration of Vedic culture, the revival of Vedic culture. And interestingly enough, both extolled the Ramayana as very profound vehicles for our evolution and encouraged us to read and absorb the Ramayana. At different times, sometimes the guru puts a lot of attention and then he moves his attention to someone else. And then we think, oh, his attention is not on the Ramayana anymore, it's now on here. So I'll forget that. No. We should not, just because the guru has shifted his attention to something else, we can still keep perpetuating the knowledge. And so that's what I've done. I've just kept my attention on Ram. And the one thing that both Sathya Sai Baba and Maharishi is this principle of transcendence. We are not just out on the outer level. We're always transcending to a deeper level in ourselves. Sathya Sai Baba says, it begins within.
Yes.
And beginning within is a transcendent experience. You can't just have your senses directed outwards. The senses turn inward. You come back to the self, come back to the Atma.
In fact, Bhagwan begins the Ramakatha Rasavahini by talking about Atma Ramayana.
You're right. I saw that. Yes.
Whole Ramayana is all about Rama is the Atma. And it's all your journey towards Atma, towards the inner self. That's what Ramayana is all about.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because that shows the resonance. And you're right. I went to the museum and I saw the section on Ramayana. It's Atma Ramayana.
Yes.
Exactly. And I read and that's the power of the Ramayana. We can enjoy the outer level of the story and the dance dramas and the performances. Bollywood is coming on with this huge film of the Ramayana this coming year, which I think will be fantastic. I heard, I hope it's going to be really good and brings out a deeper value, deeper levels. But you're right. If you don't get that the Atma aspect of the Ramayana, you can get caught up in the outer values of the story. And that's a delight for many of the masses. They need that to pull it in. But ultimately, the journey is to pull inward and inward so that we live that wholeness, absolute wholeness within ourselves. And then each of the characters are different fluctuations in that ocean of consciousness. It comes out as Ram, it comes out as Sita, it comes out as Hanuman, Lakshman. But ultimately, the wholeness, the Atma, and Atma is Brahm. I am Atma Brahm.
Rama or Atma becomes your breath, becomes your bliss, becomes your being, and you open your eyes, you see Rama. You close your eyes, you are with the Atma. I think that's the journey for all of us. But it is very, very interesting for me to know that, your journey to Ramayana started from Ramanand Sagar, just like it started for so many people in India. People had known this story in bits and pieces, but that kind of gave a good overview to everyone. Whatever generational gaps was there in narrating the story, I think that serial kind of bridged it. At least they got the story superficially. And later on, people got into it deeper.
Actually, I'll clarify. The initial impulse came, there was one videotape. Maharishi, prior to 1989, 1990, never talked about the Ramayana except for one videotape, an old videotape that I saw. He talked about the Ramayana. That hooked me. And then, he said, pick one branch. Then I began to see there was two things that happened that year. The famous British playwright, Peter Brook, did a production of the Mahabharata. And then I could see, wow, you could take these epics and put them on the stage and film in theater. Then I found out about the Ramanand Sagar. So all of it converged. Ramanand Sagar, Peter Brook's Mahabharata, Maharishi's directive. Boom.
Ramayana was waiting to capture you.
Yes.
The destiny. Rama was waiting. Awesome. And I think, just like, at the right time, the master comes. At the right time, those messages come. And at the right time, the message master sends you the right message, which will become the mission of your life. And I think that's what has happened with you. For us, we're so happy that you were part of the Vedic conference, and the insights that you brought into the Vedic conference was really enlightening. How did it feel for you being part of the conference here in Prasanthi Nilayam? This is the first visit here, I understand.
This was my first visit, and I tried to be innocent. You know, a few people told me a few things, but I wanted to be innocent. I didn't want to read. I didn't want to study. I just wanted to show up and go with my own experience. That's just the way I like to do it, because
Very nice.
people say, "Oh, this is good," and they tell you. I want to go with my experience. And at first, I didn't know what to make of it, because it is a little bit overwhelming. So many people here. It's really more like a giant ashram, and it's quite structured in terms of its very traditional values here. And at first I didn't know, wow, what is this? But over the weekend, it began to sink in. I could feel it sinking in, like just being in that hall with, in the evening, 6,000, 7,000 people chanting the Veda together. And even if I'm in my room, it's over the loudspeakers. The whole community is listening to the Veda, then the bhajans. And just the quality of devotion from the devotees here. So sincere, so heartfelt. Everyone's greeting you with Sai Ram. And then I learn at any given time there's 2,000 devotees that come here. And they're not just like students, they're like heads of companies.
Yes.
You talk to some of the people serving you meals, and he says, "Oh yeah, I'm a IT specialist, living in Mumbai." They just come here out of devotion.
Yes.
And they want to serve.
Yes.
And they serve with such purity. It's like they love to serve. And chanting the Veda, and thousands of people. And after a while, you just kind of go, wow, wow. And then finally connecting a little bit with Sathya Sai Baba, listening to his discourse, going to the museum, you realize the power here. There's real power. There's real Shakti emerging from this place. So in that container, and also, by the way, I speak at many conferences, the caliber of speakers that they attracted, so I can give credit to Sathya Sai Baba, but Subramanya Gorti. This was incredible speakers, brilliant, genius level speakers that were collected here. So the combination of these powerful speakers and this environment, which is so filled with devotion and receptivity, who could not resist this power? So when I spoke that morning, Subramanya Gorti had asked me to just, no PowerPoint, try to just do it from your heart. And that morning, that night, I didn't sleep very well. And my brain was empty. It was like a flat line. All my rehearsal, inner rehearsal, was flat line. Didn't know what I was going to say, because I didn't have any thoughts. This is unusual. And then no feeling of what I was going to say. So maybe someone suggested, I have a friend who lives in town. He said, just tune into Sathya Sai Baba. So I tuned into Sathya Sai Baba and Maharishi. And I said, I'm a blank slate. You let your words pour out of me. And I just went up there and opened my mouth and spoke. And it felt like I was speaking authentically from my heart, and the receptivity and the response from people has been extremely positive. So it was very fulfilling, to have that meeting point of this powerful, devotional, Vedic container, and having a chance to really speak to people who are really tuned in. It's very fulfilling.
Beautiful. And I think that's the reason why everyone connected, because it was not you. It was Rama who took over you. And it was Sai Rama, whom people were listening. When they were listening to you, they just felt connected, because the words were so profound. And it doesn't happen when you put your little self there. When he takes over, then of course, miracles happen. Very beautiful. Would love to have you whenever you can again in Prasanthi Nilayam. But as you leave, what are your thoughts? What are you taking from this place?
Well, I think The full value will come a little later. I mean, interestingly enough, I had a feeling I knew almost all the other speakers immediately left. Some left last night, some left first thing this morning, but even some left yesterday afternoon. I thought, don't go right away. Don't, leave right away. And I left 3 days, and I thought I would go to Humpy because that's fairly close by. And I thought, I don't even want to drive to Humpy. I'm just going to stay here for these 3 days. So I'm a little bit like a turtle where I integrate things slowly. So what am I taking away? I'm letting it soak in. I'm letting it soak in that this place reverberates. It reverberates with consciousness. It reverberates with Veda. I've never seen so much saturation with Veda in the people, in their eyes, and the chanting, and the closest thing I've had was in our Transcendental Meditation movement. We had a course in the 80s with 7,000 people came from all over the world. When you had 7,000 people meditating, it was the same thing. It was more, more on transcendence. So I remember that experience, and this was a little bit like that. So what I'm leaving with is just getting a sense of what Vedic civilization could be like when people are living a Vedic way of life. And I'm going to allow this to digest and percolate inside of me and see what unfolds. But there's some feeling I was hoping for, and maybe a little bit of expectation that I would get a flash of brilliance, because Sathya Sai Baba was known for creating miracles. But instead, it's more like a subtle sinking in, like it's sinking, it's soaking into me. And this morning I had a feeling, things are going to be different in your life from now on. It's a faint feeling. I'm a little bit more mature. I've been around in many situations, so I don't have those giant flashes, which I've had in my life, many. Now it's more like a mature integration. And I'm awaiting to see what unfolds, but I have deep honor and respect for what Sathya Sai Baba has created and how pure the devotees here are continuing that tradition. It's very inspiring, very touching.
Beautiful. I'm really so glad to hear that, because the whole conference was about the Vedas, and you said you got a glimpse of the Vedic civilization, you got a glimpse of the Vedic way of life here. That's very heartening. And the second thing is, of course, Bhagwan works his way in every heart in a unique manner. Every person is unique, and every person's stage of evolution at that point in time is unique. So what is best for you will come to you in his way, but that'll be the best thing that could happen to you at this stage of your life. And that's what perhaps is happening now.
When I was invited to speak here, which was over a year ago, I really didn't know why I was asked. I wasn't or haven't been a Sai Baba devotee. I didn't even know much about the organization and the people. I had no direct experience. I'm not in the, even though I do get invited to speak at academic conferences. I spoke at the World Ramayana Conference just now in Jabalpur as part of this trip. But still, it was very surprising. But I didn't ask any questions. When someone asked me, I just say yes. Anything with the Ramayana, I just say yes. But all along the way, I thought, why are they inviting me? I'm not connected with them. But like you said, the way Baba works is unfathomable. And clearly, I was called to be here. And I don't, still I'm surprised, because the other speakers, it was more dominated by people with science backgrounds, a lot of scientific backgrounds, even though their talks might have been. I was the one non-scientist here. So in a way, I didn't even feel like I fit. But when I gave my talk, I could feel that I touched people's hearts. And so now, like you said, it'll emerge over time why I was invited here. And I'm looking forward to actually keep the relationship growing. I met with some of the leaders last night to see how can we continue this relationship between the transcendental meditation world and the Satya Sai Baba world, and we'll see what unfolds.
Beautiful. I know it will only grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.